In this video, I'm going to talk about sports betting and whether or not it's taxable, as well as cover a few fun facts from the recent Super Bowl. Welcome back. This is episode 188. I'm recording this week's episode before Super Bowl LV3, or for those of you who are not familiar with Roman numerals, Super Bowl 58. And last year's Super Bowl set the record as the most watched TV event in Nielsen rating history at over 115 million viewers. And that beat out the 2014 Super Bowl that was between the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks that previously had set the Nielsen rating record. And many people believe this year's Super Bowl will set another record, but it's not what you think. It will most likely set the record for the most amount of money wagered or bet on a Super Bowl ever. Since most states are now allowing legal sports betting, I want to talk more about that and how those winnings may impact your income tax. By this point in the new year, probably many of us have moved on from our New Year's resolutions. I know that I have with some of mine. But if you're still serious about getting a plan in place for retirement, then consider signing up for my online self-paced retirement planning course. Or even better, if you live close to me in Connecticut, consider attending one of my in-person retirement planning workshops. I offer these at 4 different times during the year, and I have 2 classes that are starting in early March. But seating is limited, so if you'd like to sign up for either class, head over to retirewithryan.com, click on courses, and then if you want to come in person, click on Retirement Readiness Live. Or if you want to go through at your own pace and have access to the information at any time, then consider clicking on Retirement Readiness on Demand. But either way, you'll get the same great information. So back to the Super Bowl. Like many Americans, I've been fascinated by the Super Bowl. I come from a sports household. My father has always been a big sports fan, and I don't think I've ever missed a Super Bowl since I've been born. Even though in my early years, I'd rather be playing with my toys than watching the plays in the game. But many of us watch the Super Bowl for other reasons. The ads of the Super Bowl, the halftime show, especially if your team isn't in it. And that's why this is such a heavily watched event. And I'm a lifelong New York Giants fan, and it's been a long time since my team has been in the Super Bowl, but I still watch every year. But I'm fortunate as a Giants fan that my team has had a lot of success in my lifetime with 4 Super Bowl wins. I'm sure if there's any New England Patriots fans that are listening, you wish that the Giants probably hadn't gotten a few of those Super Bowls because they came at the Patriots' expense. So let me get this out of the way quickly. I'm going to make a quick prediction for the Super Bowl. I believe the Chiefs will win, and the score will be 28-21. If you're looking at the odds of the Super Bowl, or we're looking at it before the game, the 49ers are favored by 2 points, so it's expected to be a very close game. And I'm recording this on February 7th, so you can come back and grade me and see how well I do with my predictions, and then obviously we'll know what happened with the game. So just a few fun facts, Super Bowl facts. Patrick Mahomes, who is the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, and Brock Purdy, who's the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, were both in elementary school the last time a team won consecutive Super Bowl games. There have been 8 repeat Super Bowl winners in the first 39 Super Bowls, but there haven't been any other repeat winners in the past 18 years. And the Chiefs have a chance to repeat and break that streak. The Chiefs had a chance to repeat in 2021, but lost out to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if the Chiefs have won, this will be Patrick Mahomes' 3rd Super Bowl win, and he's the youngest quarterback at 28 years of age to start 4 Super Bowls. So if he has won, he will join Tom Brady and Troy Aikman as the only quarterbacks to win 3 Super Bowls before their 30th birthday. Brock Purdy, who's the 49ers quarterback, was the last pick in the 2022 NFL draft, and hardly what you would imagine for a Super Bowl quarterback, and he has become one of the best quarterbacks in the league. If you know anything about drafting quarterbacks, it is extremely hard for NFL teams to draft quarterbacks that will be successful. Many number 1 or top 10 draft picks, first-round draft picks of quarterbacks end up not doing well, so it's really It's really a very hard thing to predict. But both of these teams are defensive specialists, with each only allowing less than 18 points per game. So it is expected this will have been a low-scoring game. And the 49ers are on their quest for the 6th Super Bowl. They hadn't won a Super Bowl in 29 years, and the last Super Bowl they were in was in 2020, prior to this year where they lost out to the Chiefs. So we have a bit of a rematch here. And a win for the 49ers would tie them with the most wins for franchise history, tying them with the Patriots and the Steelers, which both teams have 6 wins. So how much does the Super Bowl make? Well, it's estimated that the Super Bowl makes about $300 million to $1.3 billion a year. Pretty large range. There's not a lot of data on this information. But much of the money generated by the Super Bowl is pocketed by the NFL. They receive 100% of ticket sales. They earn tens of millions of dollars from merchandise sales, and they receive a lot of money for the broadcast rights to broadcast the game from the different networks that are, air the game. There's contracts that are signed, and the broadcasting of the Super Bowl goes back and forth. Super Bowl ads this year are going for $7 million for a 30-second spot. I know a lot of my listeners that would like to get their hands on $7 million. And this is the second year that they are at this price. The Super Bowl ads first cracked the $1 million mark in 1995. So they've been pretty expensive for a long time. But for many companies, this ad spot, they consider to be worth it. Companies often don't have a broad reach anymore to consumers. With many of us watching TV in a fragmented way through streaming networks or on-demand viewing, there's not as large of an audience turning into regularly scheduled programs on cable TV as there used to be. So this is really an opportunity for companies to get a broad reach. Now, for those that know me, I'm not a gambler. I've only made one sports bet in my lifetime. And people think I'm joking, but I am not. And I hadn't made that bet until recently. I don't like betting on sports. I'd rather invest my money in the stock market. It's certainly not a sure thing, but for me, I look at that as a better long-term investment. A few years ago, FanDuel, which is one of the online betting sites, was offering 55-1 odds on picking the Super Bowl winner in 2021 if you opened a new account, if you weren't a customer of theirs. However, it was limited to a $5 maximum bet, so you could win a maximum of $275. And I mentioned earlier that the Chiefs were playing the Super Bowl that year, and they were playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers were heavily favored. If you remember, Tom Brady was still on the team, as well as Rob Gronkowski. So I opened an account with FanDuel, and I had my wife also open an account. And we could have gone with the odds as far as the Buccaneers being favored and both bet the $5 on the Buccaneers and each won $275. Or if we had been wrong, we would have lost $10. But instead, what I did is I played the smart bet, and each of us bet on a different team. I bet on the Bucs, and she bet on the Chiefs, and so we were guaranteed to win. So we bet $10, and the Buccaneers end up winning. We collected $275, which was 27.5 times our odds, which is phenomenal. There aren't many bets that pay those types of odds. So this was extremely good. I wish I could have bet a lot more. I collected our earnings. We both closed out our accounts, and I've never bet since. So as far as legal sports betting, I mentioned earlier that sports betting is now legal, and it's estimated that $23.1 billion will be wagered on this year's Super Bowl. Now that's up from $16 billion last year. So that's almost an $8 million increase, about a 50% increase over last year. That is a tremendous increase. That's why people are talking about this. And in the past, if you wanted to bet on sports games, up until even a few years ago, you needed to do that through a sports bookie or a bookmaker. And this, of course, was illegal, still is, though many people were betting this way and continue to bet this way. So you'd make your bet over the phone, you'd call up your bookie. Some of them have online sites, I've been told, and you then settle up with your bookie at the end of the week. Now, sports betting is legal in 38 states, including Washington, D.C., and it's estimated that $1.5 billion will be wagered through legal sites on the game. Now, there's lots of different bets that you can make. You can bet on just the game itself, who's going to win. You could bet on the coin toss. You could bet on who's going to score first, who's going to kick the first field goal. There's tons of things that you can bet on. And the difference when placing one of these bets through a legal site is that you have to put your bet in up front, meaning you have to pay for your bet up front. you can't make a bet that you don't have the money to cover, which is a good thing. That means you can really only lose what you have. And this is still one of the largest dangers for gamblers who bet through a bookie. Bookies, for the most part, allow you to bet on credit, meaning you can make bets without paying your bets up front. This allows you to lose and win more money you don't have. The trouble, as many stories and movies have chronicled, is that when you lose and you don't have the money to pay, that is when you have to start paying interest to your bookie. This can be sometimes known as the VIG or the juice. And these interest rates are even worse than payday loans, which has been labeled a predatory lender. And these rates could be 1% per week of interest. So if you don't pay up to your bookie also might resort to violence or threats. So certainly something that you don't want to get into, and you want to be very careful. And the National Council on Problem Gambling indicates that sports betting is 5 times more likely to lead to problematic gambling than any other type of gambling. So you really want to be careful. And about 42 million adults are estimated to bet legally or illegally on this year's game. That's an increase of over 41% over last year. So if you're going to bet, make sure it's something that you'll be okay losing if you don't get the money back through winning. However, the advantage that bookies have is that they pay in cash. They don't send out 1099s. So that means if you're winning gambling earnings through a bookie, that money mostly goes untaxed. And unless you're self-reporting this, which of course the IRS is saying you should, then you don't pay tax on this. There's also many Super Bowl football pools. And with these, you purchase a square on a board. And usually these boards have 100 squares. And each square is assigned a number for each team, 0 to 9. And if your numbers match with the game score at the end of any of the 4 quarters of the game, then you win a cut of the total squares purchased. So let's say, for example, you got the numbers 0 for the Chiefs and 7 for the 49ers. If the score at the end of the first quarter is 0 Chiefs, 7 49ers, then you win a part of the football square, depending on how they do it. Sometimes it's equally divided. Sometimes the final score is worth more. And these squares could go for as little as $10 or $20, but I've heard of squares going for hundreds. I'm sure there's squares that are going for thousands, right? There could be a lot of money changing hands in these pools, but your odds are very low because if you're only buying 1 or 2 squares, you've got a 1%, 2% chance of winning. And it's estimated that about 36 million adults are going to bet casually on the game with friends as part of a football pool or through football squares this year. And that's an increase of over 32% over last year. 13% of the betting will come from Nevada, which is where Las Vegas is, which is where the game is being played. But that's also where there's legalized gambling as well. And Las Vegas has offered legalized sports gambling for many, many years. And New York is estimated to come in second with about 12% of the betting, and then New Jersey third with about 10%. So finally, to betting taxation. If you're betting through legal means, you should know how much of your winnings might be taxable. And if you bet through a website like FanDuel or DraftKings and win more than $600 of net profit, there's a formula they use for that, then you are legally obligated to report that. And they will send you what's known as a 1099 MISC, which would show your earnings. And then you need to report that. If you receive your winnings through PayPal, then you might receive what's known as a 1099K. So you may have heard recently that the IRS was going to implement changes to this 1099K, requiring any payouts of $600 or more, or I think just transactions of $600 or more, through third-party payroll processors like Venmo and PayPal to be reported. So there was a big concern that if you're sending your friend, let's say, $1,000 to pay for a vacation that you're renting a house together, that your friend would now have to report this $1,000 as income, even though you're just reimbursing them for part of the cost. Well, luckily, the IRS in 2023 reverted back to the previous 1099K requirements, which are $20,000 threshold or more than 200 transactions. So hopefully, most people won't be getting these 1099Ks this year if they're not, making large transactions on these third-party payroll processors. However, some states like Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont, Virginia, and D.C. have a $600 threshold for requiring a 1099K for transactions over $600 for 2023. So if you're in one of those states, be aware that you might be getting one of these. And if you don't receive a 1099K or a 1099 MSIC, the IRS is still always expecting you to report all of your income regardless of the amount if this is actually income. So make sure that you're keeping up on that. So that's a recap on some information about sports betting as well as some fun facts for the Super Bowl. We'll see if my prediction panned out, and I hope that you found this episode helpful. And as always, if you have a gambling addiction, please get help. You can call 1-800-662-4357. That's a gambling hotline, or you can look up a gambling hotline in your state. So I hope you found this episode entertaining, and if you did, please look up my podcast on Apple Podcasts by searching Retire with Ryan and leave me a 5-star review. If you have a listener question and you'd like to have it considered for a future episode, head over to retirewithryan.com and click on Ask a Question. Have a great week, and I look forward to talking with you next Wednesday. Take care.